Howdy YouTube, and welcome to another episode of the Gunman. So back in the home garage again, the home workshop again, and yeah, so I've cut the bonnet back flat on my Tirana, so I've had a bit of experience. I've been able to sort of refine and hone the procedure a little bit. So yeah, basically cutting the entire clear coat back flat on my Tirana here. I thought I would just go through the procedure that I'm going to tackle at this point. As always, it may change because you can always sort of refine that procedure and find a slightly better way to do it. But what I've been doing is starting off with 1200 grit or 1200 grit. These are hard sheets, wet or dry, right? So that's these ones over here. I've just been cutting them into little squares there and using the blocks here. So these are awesome blocks actually. They're from malamotive.com.au if you go over there. Thank you for sending these out too. That was a few years ago, but either way, they've got a good range of different sounding blocks here. So you've got the Perspex block there. So that's a nice hard block. They actually do tell you what they recommend, the grits that they recommend here. So with the hard block, they recommend it say 600 to 800. So I did try that with the 1200 and it was just a little bit too hard for what I was looking for. Like, I'm not looking for absolute perfection out of this. I just want a nice flat finish out of it, right? So I did end up finding that this one was better, and it does make sense because it does say on here 600 to 1200 grit is what's recommended for that one, and I've been using 1200 grit, and then you can just work your way up. Now some people, I believe, that do this work, they will start with, they'll use the entire way through, right? And they will even block the whole way through. I don't do that. I've not been doing that. So they'll block it with the hard block, firm, medium, then soft, and they'll just go down through the grades, right? So I've just been blocking it with the 1200 grit, and then from then on it's been hit with the orbital just to save time as much as anything. Like, the amount of time you've got to take to sand all those 1200 grits out by hand is immense, I would imagine anyway. And some people may disagree, but again, I don't do this kind of work all day every day, so I'm happy to be wrong. But I'm not wrong that 3M make the best abrasives, okay? Especially when it comes to the finer grits. I used to be friends with one of the 3M reps over there in Perth, and he was telling me that 3M actually have their own mines, so they can control the grade of their abrasives, whereas a lot of these other companies, they'll buy them actually off companies like 3M. They'll buy their raw materials off companies, so they can't 100% guarantee that it's going to be exactly the same every single time. So basically 3M abrasives is where it's at, but they are very expensive. So a box of these, you're probably looking at, can't remember, 150, like the 2000 grit box, I do remember because that's the recent one I bought. That was $100. I think these are about $70, so that's not too bad. But like I say, as you go up the finer, they get more expensive. So these 5,000, probably $150 or something for 15 discs. So they're about $10 a piece, right? Give or take. Don't quote me on those prices. But I do even have these 1500 grit Trizac pads, but I don't know, it could be a combination between the orbital sander that I have not being the best. It's not very grunty. I really don't rate that Roops machine. If you're in the market for a orbital sander, don't get that. Get anything but that, pretty much. But yeah, I really wasn't happy. It was sort of putting big pigtails into it, and it would stall, that orbital sander would stall. So what I ended up finding on the bonnet was, once I started buffing it, there was heaps of sanding scratches that were left. But when I revisited it, I hit it with these 2000 grits. So these are meant to be used dry, right? So take note of that. 30766. I highly rate these things. They're not that bad actually compared to some of these other ones. So you get 50 in the box, and that was $100. So I don't think that's too bad. But you do burn through them. So yeah, like on one panel like this, if I use sort of more than 10, I don't really bat an eyelid at it. So like I say, this is the kind of work, if you want to cut your whole car back flat, or even if you just want to pay somebody to do it, expect to pay a decent dollar, and this is only part of the reason why, right? So yes, the materials are expensive, but the labor's expensive too, and it is very labor intensive as well. So yeah, it takes a long time to do it. So I think the bonnet took me easily 5 hours, and there's parts that I need to revisit, right? So there's a few parts that you'd nearly get away with it. Like, it's not, so I've done it twice already, and there's a couple of spots that I will revisit. I don't necessarily have to, because it's not that bad, but yeah, so the first time, what I did on that bonnet, the first time I went 1200 grit, 1500 grit on the orbital, and then 2000 with these things. Now, I don't know about these. I'm kind of on the fence about them. I think they're okay, but on the other hand, because they're on that little bit of foam there, I find that they'll more go in and out of the scratches, if that makes sense. Whereas this here, it's more of a hard disc, right? It's more of a hard sandpaper, so that's more likely, I found, to like cut the deeper sounding scratches out from your previous stage. Whereas this, I noticed that it was sort of, yes, it was fine, like making the scratches finer, but still just kind of following the contours of the previous scratches. So but in saying that, I've heard some people say that they use these the whole way through and swear by them. So maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just a me thing. And then from the 2000, I hopped to 3000 and then 5000. Now the 5000 you can probably skip. And a lot of people do skip that. There is actually even another one, 8000 after that. Now 8000 is basically already cut for you. But yeah, another thing worth mentioning, something that I haven't done, and I'm not capable of doing it at the moment because I don't have a guide code, but what they say they'll do, they'll hit it with their 1200 or whatever stage they start with, because some people do start with like 800, like something really coarse. They'll just rip right into it. They'll go whatever they hit it with first, and then they'll dry guide code it, you know, like the dry powdered guide codes. They'll hit it with the guide code, and then they'll hit it with the next stage. So I can't do that because I don't have any, and I'm just gonna have to work around it for now. But I think that's a good idea. And then obviously once all your sanding's done, we'll go and hit it with some compounds. So yeah, look, everybody's got their own opinion. Everybody's right. You're wrong when it comes to these kind of compounds. Just ask any detailer. But yeah, look, where I'm at with it is I don't think you can beat this for your cut stage. So the Perfected Fast Cut Plus Extreme, that is awesome. So I do like Sonak's products, but their cut, it just doesn't quite cut it. Pardon the pun. So Stefan from Sonax Australia has actually recently given me a few products to trial, and he actually gave them to me for free. He said, look, just do some videos on it, keep it real, tell people what you honestly think of it, and you can just have them. Now look, to be honest, I don't like that cutting compound. I really do not rate it. I tried it on the bonnet of this car when I was cutting it. So I started off with that, and then flipped the pad over to a new pad, like a new side, right? So it was clean, I was not getting any contamination. Cleaned the panel down, put some of this on, cut it, and it just did not cut it. It was leaving those deep sanding scratches. Well, that weren't necessarily deep because I had gone through all of the stages. So sorry Stefan, you guys really do need to revisit your cutting stage before you get thumbs up from me anyway. He was talking about something to do with not the size of the grit, but the sharpness of the grit. Look, ultimately, that's, I don't know, the proof is in the pudding when it comes to me. It just doesn't cut it. That's all I can really say about their ultimate cut. The same thing was true with their Cut Max, right? So their Cut Max is really clean, like it won't actually dust up. You won't get any dust with the Cut Max, so it's good for buff all overs. But again, it just didn't cut it. With D-nibs, you'd just be buffing and buffing and buffing, and it would never get rid of them. But I do like their step 2. So their perfect finish. On a normal car, like a normal color, you could just finish it with that, right? So just do a 2-step. But they do have a nano polish. So the reason I know about this is because on my Corolla, I had the ultra hard paint on it. And if, like, most people don't know what I'm talking about. They've never had to polish the hardest of the hard paints, right? And the funny thing about it is detailers actually call it soft paint, but it's not, it's hard. The reason why it scratches is because it is so hard. So with a softer clear coat, you'll actually get a bit of bounce to it. If you put your fingernail into it, you'll be able to push a little indent into it, and then you wait for an hour or so and it'll come back up. So that's actually the softer paint, whereas details will call it the other way around. So the softer paint is easy to polish because if you wipe it with your rag or you hit it with your buff, some of those scratches will sort of self-repair, if that makes sense. But yeah, so the quartz crystal clear, which I've got on the Corolla, that was so rock hard and it was just a mess, and I couldn't figure out how to get it to look good, and it was black too. But ultimately I'm glad it all happened because it enabled me to take my polishing to the next step. And I've worked with a few detailers over the last sort of 6 to 8 months because we do have our own shop there. We've got a shop and we need like kind of the best of the best detailers. I've had a few tell me even, they're like, dude, you're the best. I've never seen a painter that can polish as good as you. So that was a good little pat on the back from a detailer who I actually rated too. But yeah, ultimately the way that I did manage to fix the roof on the Corolla was with the 3M 3-step. So the step 1, step 2, which I don't have any at the moment. I am kind of forced to use the perfect finish, which I do rate anyway, so it's not a bad thing. And then the step 3. So that's why for a long time, I'm just 3M 3-step all the way. And when most people come and ask me about polishing, I'll say, look, if you just want a one system answer, go the 3M 3-step, but replace step 1 with that, right? Because the 3M 3-step actually starts with a white lidded bottle. And yeah, so that'll go the white lid, then the black, and then the blue, right? So they're color coded. It's just kind of idiot proof, you know what I mean? Green pad, green bottle, black pad, black bottle or black lid, blue pad, blue lid. I do have my blue pad over there, but this one here is equivalent to step 3, right? And I do quite rate it. So yeah, if you want that absolute next step, which most people won't need, I'm kind of a bit of a sucker for these kind of detailing products. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and as you can see, I've got loads of different products there. So yeah, I find it fun to try new things, but yeah, really, Sonax, you need to sort that cutting compound out, because if you did, I could potentially be saying Sonax the whole way. But I can't say that because of your ultimate cut. So yeah. But yeah, once I'm happy with all the polishing, I'll do the 3-step polish. I'll give it a week, let it breathe, make sure that nothing else is gonna come up. Hit it, re-hit it with another little bit of a sand and polish if I absolutely need to. And then I'm gonna give it a ceramic coating. So I've got a couple of different ceramic coatings here. That is the CC36, which is this one. This is getting a little bit old now, but doesn't mean it's a bad product. There are just newer ones out to, yeah, sort of, I guess, complement it. But this is the one that I'm looking forward to using. So they recently introduced a couple of different ceramic coatings to the market. So you've now got CC36 there, which is the one that I've got there. They've introduced EVO, which I have not used. Potentially in the future, I'd like to try it. But I just said, hey, give me a shot of that one, the CC1, ceramic coating 1. So the idea of this is it's a one stage, right? So there's no base coat, then gloss coat. This is just a 1-step, and then you're done. I was even thinking of giving it a stack, right? I was thinking I could sort of hit it with the base coat of the CC36, and then over the top of it with the CC1 and then the gloss coat. But I might even speak to Stefan about it. He would probably say don't do that. He would just say, look, that's the product, or that's the product, use one of them correctly. But either way, that's just something I might play around with at a later date. I do love my ceramic coatings, if for no other reason, just the way that the water beads off it. So anyone that sort of knows what they're on about in this industry will know that nice freshly polished paint beads off really well, but it doesn't take long until you get those minor scratches in it and the water will sort of start sticking to it. So basically that's as much as anything, as much as the protection that they say that it does, I'm more interested in the water beading. I know it's a little bit shallow, but for somebody like myself who keeps the car clean, who is well and truly capable of polishing it whenever I want, it's not so much about protecting the paint for me. It's more about just getting that awesome water bead off it when it's raining. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. But I do actually have a few other spray sealants that I use outside. When I'm washing the car, I'll just give it a spray seal. and they're really easy. So yeah, there are quite a few good ones on the market as well, so I do recommend looking into them. But yeah, one other thing that I did want to say just before we round this video out is if you do start buffing and you find a few deeper sounding scratches, don't just sit there with the buff, heat it up, buff, thinking that you'll get it out. You may get it out in the meantime, like for a short amount of time, but it will always come back. So as you heat the clear coat up when you're buffing it, it will expand. So what'll happen is that the scratches will still be there, right? But because it's opening up like that, you can't see it. So what happens when it cools back down, it'll contract back again, and that scratch will be back there. So hopefully that one makes sense. But yeah, so what I did is on the bonnet, I think I mentioned it before, I thought I got it right. I hit it with the buff, it wasn't good. Left it overnight, let it sort of breathe, let it cool down again, and then revisit it with the 2000, 3000, 5000, and then it was pretty much perfect the next time. So again, there's more than one ways to skin a cat. Do it whichever way works for you. This way has been working for me. Stay tuned and we'll get the buff onto the car. Until next time, get out there and paint some shit. Gunman out.